What's up, guys? RW146 here, back with a little update video for tonight. I didn't get to make too much progress on my cars today. I was just busy with other things. But I did want to go over one thing with you, which is a very common issue that people have when installing and setting up their ride height on their coilovers and everything. And I bought these ISCs for my 2009 WRX secondhand off of Facebook Marketplace, and they're in great shape. They were only on the car for a couple thousand miles, and the kid I got them from said that he took them off because he wasn't happy with the ride quality, and they also made a lot of noise that he didn't expect. Now, a little bit of that could be attributed to the style of the top hat here. This style uses a pretty much solid bearing for where the OEM suspension would have like a rubber bushing setup in addition to a bearing. So that's one thing. But when I got them home and I took a look at them, I could determine almost immediately what the issue was. And in order to go over that issue, it's just, requires a little bit of basic knowledge on how the height adjustment on this style of coilover works. So you'll notice at the bottom here, there's 3 locking collars. Now on some setups, it doesn't have the third collar, it'll just have 2. And that's an entirely different situation that I'm not going to go over just because it's not really necessary. But on this style right here, these 2 up top are not to adjust the ride height. And that's exactly what the person that I got these from did. You'll notice this big gap here at the top between the spring and the actual top portion of the coilover. That's not supposed to be there. If you have coilovers that are like this with the 3 collar setup, you don't want any of this space here. And the reason for that is because this bottom collar right here is what you actually use to adjust the height. This is just for spring preload. So basically when you buy coilovers like this brand new, most of the time they'll come with the spring preload set, so none of this space here will exist. And then you don't have to do anything to them. All you have to do is loosen this collar at the bottom up, and then actually the entire shot cartridge assembly will spin in the mount. Usually you'll spin it from the bottom just because you can undo this and then spin this whole thing up or down. To lower it, you would go up. And obviously this person went down with these instead, created this big gap here. And what that'll do is, whether or not you realize it, that's however much travel in your suspension that you're now taking off. That's that much closer to being bottomed out just at ride height. Whereas if you lowered the car using the actual height adjustment and spun the mounting section of the coilover up, you would still have all of this travel. And what that's going to do is that's going to not only create this looseness here, and when you go over bumps, the spring could rattle around, it could reseat, stuff like that. It'll create unwanted effects in your suspension, not just limited to sounds, but limited to the ride quality, because again, the coilover at this point, because of this gap here, is compressed that much already just at ride height. So you're really taking out a lot of the potential suspension travel that you have here. I think the actual cartridge ends right there. So you went from having this much travel to this much travel before you even hit any bumps, and that's going to cause it to feel a lot stiffer, a lot less responsive than you would really want it to, and what it could potentially do. So all 4 of these coilovers are like this. It just, again, looks like he used the spring preload collars to adjust the height and left the actual height on the bottom of the coilover alone. So once I get all this set up, I'm not going to bother doing it right now because I want to do it when it's on the car. It'll actually have a lot more leverage for me to be able to get the collar wrenches in there and spin it. But once I get that fixed, I guarantee these coilovers are going to ride like they're intended. ISC is a pretty decent coilover brand. And again, these are just about brand new. It's just that difference right there, just in which collars you choose to adjust, and knowing which ones to adjust can make or break your entire suspension setup. Also, if you buy a set of used coilovers, I'll go over this real quick. These are adjustable dampening, which means they come with these adjusters, which you will put in the hole in the top of the coilover, and you can spin left or right. Usually left is to soften it and right is to stiffen it. The easiest way to get this to a nice baseline setting, if you buy a set of used coilovers and you don't know where they're at, if you don't have the manufacturer's info on how many clicks there are in the coilover, some have 16, some have 32. It really depends on the brand and the model. But what you could do is spin it full hard or full soft, and then count the number of clicks that it gets to the opposite side. So if you spin it all the way to the left, count how many clicks it takes until it bottoms out all the way to the right and stops turning. and then divide that by 2, spin it back that number of clicks, and that'll be your baseline medium setting. And from there, you'll also know how many steps there are, how many levels of dampening adjustment there are in your coilovers. That's just a quick rundown on how to get this set up. And hopefully, if, again, you aren't experienced with how to set up coilovers, if you buy used coilovers and they're not set up properly, just something along those lines, hopefully this sheds some light on exactly what you should do. And again, this only really applies to a setup like this where there's a collar on the bottom that meets to the actual bottom mounting section of the coilover, in addition to the 2 that you would find on any coilover. This is generally how a lot of coilovers are set up nowadays. So obviously they're going to look a little bit different depending on what car they're going on, but overall this is a pretty much universal application. It's a universal process and should apply to just about any decent, middle of the road or better coilover that you might get. So that's it for tonight. I'll have some updates tomorrow for you guys. I also did bring home my Advans, which are going to be going on my 240. I'm going to do a little video update of those in the next couple days here, but I have been busy with other stuff. But I'll keep trying to put out some content for you guys, maybe a couple more tech tips. Apart from that, this is RW146 signing off. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video if it helped you out, or if you think it might help anyone else out that you know. All right, later.